What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Wildcat Wire. I'm Jake Janisek, and I'm here with Nate Thomas. And Nate, it's been quite a while since we've done a podcast.
It has. It's been, 6 weeks now? We haven't done a podcast since the firing of Tim Miles, which seems like ages ago, but it's a little bit of a bittersweet moment for us.
Yeah, it's definitely a bittersweet moment. It's going to be our last episode here for the Wildcat Wire. Nate and I, as you all know, are seniors. We'll be graduating next week. Our last day is going to be the 22nd. So, Nate, how do you feel your high school career has gone?
Trust me, I've loved every single moment of the past 4 years, but, it definitely feels like this is kind of the end of the road, and, just kind of wanting to move on at this point. Looking forward to the next chapter of our careers.
Yeah, we definitely have a lot to look forward to. And as we do have a lot to look forward to on this podcast today, we're going to take a look back. We're going to look back at all our favorite sports moments that we've had through our high school careers. And it's definitely a lot of fun to, just look back and really see what we were able to witness in our 4 years here at Millard West.
Yeah, so we're going to give a full rundown, all 4 years. So this is going to go all the way back to August of 2015. And so since we're probably going to spend quite a bit of time talking about some of these things, we're just going to hop right into it. We'll try and keep this pretty short, but we've got about a dozen events here that we kind of want to go through because we felt like these are, some of the best moments we've seen. So starting off first, August of 2015, both of our first sporting events, our football game against top-ranked Omaha North. So if you don't remember this game, a lot of you probably won't. This was Omaha North's per se down year. Just coming off a state championship, and going into the season, they did not have the best of it. They ended up finishing in the state semifinals at the end of the year to Millard West, but this was a huge game because nobody expected Millard West to come in and beat Omaha North, and they did by a scoreline of 21-19. Jake, what do you really remember from this game?
Well, pretty much what I remember from this game is it was the first big sporting event that I've been to from Millard West, and it was a packed house. A lot of people were there. It was a lot of fun, and just Millard West being able to pull out this win was really cool. Just so the whole entire game, it was so fun. And that was my first time really being in that student section. And right when that first game happened, I knew that all 4 years being in that student section would be a blast. And all the games that we've been through and all the great games we've been through, it just, God dang it. Why did my dad have to scream when he walked into the door? What, are you mad at my dad?
Yes.
God dang it. Did you hear him?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I'm shutting my door. Alrighty. Well, I can keep talking about that. I can start off with how I felt.
Yeah, so we're just going to go back to, you're going to redo your whole entire part that you just said. 3, 2, 1, go.
Yeah, it was such an exciting game, that game against Omaha North. It was my first time really being in that student section for Millard West, and I knew I would have a blast in that section for all my 4 years. Just how amazing it was and having such a great game, just how excited people got. And that's really was, my first time just being able to experience that high school feel and just being able to be with friends. And I will definitely never really forget that Omaha North game because that's something that you just can't, take away from anyone. Their first event and having such a great game like that, it's just something really cool to look back on.
Yeah, so obviously we're mainly looking at it more as the sentimental values of, that was a crazy game to start off all 4 years. But even if you look back at the game, it was crazy. Logan Andrew scored a touchdown, I believe, with 2 minutes left to give Millard West a lead. They end up getting a stop. realized that this was not one of the best Omaha North teams you were going to see. But that game was crazy in the fact that everyone thought Omaha North is going to go back. They don't have Calvin Strong. They have Jordan Strong this time. He's going to be the next Calvin. He's going to live up in Calvin's footsteps. He's going to be the best running back in Nebraska. It never really panned out for him to be that way, but having that hype built up around that Viking program going into this game and then them getting knocked off in their first one of the season on local television, Thursday Night Lights, it was just a crazy feeling because you're playing on what almost felt like a game that should have been played in November at Memorial Stadium.
Yeah. And kind of speaking of it being on a Thursday, I remember that because that was the first game of the year. And, we got football practice canceled by Coach P to go out and support our seniors and stuff like that in that first game. So, that was such an amazing game. And overall, it was just a really cool season to experience our first years, as that kind of moves us on to our next game as the state championship, Millard West versus Millard North. Kind of a bittersweet game, but definitely something to look back on. Kind of how did you feel about that state championship game our freshman year, Nate?
So definitely this game, I'll go out and I'll say it right away, did not feel like a game that was going to be played at Memorial Stadium in November towards the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
Millard West beat Millard North 42-7.
Mm-hmm.
We came in all the confidence in the world. We're going to beat them 42-7 again.
Yeah.
Didn't really turn out that game. But it was definitely, a crazy one. Millard West being down, was it 21-0 coming back. Ended up losing 21-14, but God, you think about it. Millard West definitely had the more chances to win that game. They had more opportunities. They missed a field goal at the very beginning of the game when it was 0-0. They had multiple turnovers. They had multiple drop passes that would have went for touchdowns. And, it was a crazy one, but nonetheless, getting to experience a game at Memorial Stadium with some of your closest friends in the middle of November was, something crazy. And, even after that loss, I don't even have hard feelings about it.
Yeah.
Just because the fact it was so crazy to think about it as, you're playing in a football state championship game.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought that I'd had that moment in high school. And having that as a freshman was, it set the high standards for, where we're going to go over the next, at that point, 3.5 years.
Yeah, and I still remember that last pass, fourth down, just gets knocked out of Shea White's hands at about, I think, the 2-yard line. I was sitting kind of at the end by the field. I got to meet DeMornay Pearsonell at the state title game. He was suffering through an injury, so I was right there with him. We were both, just watching that, and that ball just gets out of Shea White's hands on fourth down, and it's over. And that was definitely something hard to see. But, you're right, Nate. Being able to experience that our freshman year is something we just can't forget. And it's kind of bittersweet that was the only state football title game we were able to attend.
We'll talk about the other one that we thought we might have had later in this episode. But moving on to the next one, another state championship game. This one, spring sports. Millard West Spring Sports was never really that great when we were there. We had a lot of good athletes, just sometimes it never really panned together. But this was the one time that you really thought, okay, this might be it. Girls Basketball Championship 2016, Millard West versus Lincoln East. What do you remember of that game, Jake?
Well, pretty much, I just remember just sitting at home watching it on NET. First time our girls were in that, not the first time our girls were in the state title game, but our girls were in the state title game our freshman year, and it just seemed that year just like the game of state titles. Kind of how did you feel, Nate? Like really going into that game, because obviously we weren't the biggest into girls basketball at this point, but what do you kind of remember from like you two like sitting at home and watching it?
Well, first of all, I was home alone. And so I had the TV blaring, the big flat screen in the living room. because I thought, well, I have to have it on the best screen in the house for this one. So I just remember sitting there. I never really thought how this game was going to go. We didn't know, who the powerhouses were. You didn't know who the best teams, who the best players were. And, just for this game, it was like, you just had all the confidence because it's like, what do you got to lose? Like, we don't know what's going on, but we sure do know as heck Millard West has a chance to win this game. And, going into the fourth quarter, it was neck and neck the whole time. And, those last few moments when Lincoln East took the lead in the final seconds and then Philly missing the final turnaround jumper, I'm not going to forget those moments. I know it was heartbreaking to see that because you never want to see your team lose in a state title game, but when you just felt deflated.
Yeah.
After that game, just because of the fact, it was a state title game and the girls only made it to the state tournament the next year, and then they haven't qualified for the past 2 years. So it's definitely is a wild game, and it had a wild finish. But this one was a little bit more depressing, and I think at the moment it definitely compared nothing to the sadness I've had after the Miller North football game.
Yeah, I do see what you mean. So it was definitely a bittersweet freshman year, but we're going to kind of go on to our sophomore year here. And, there wasn't a whole lot to talk about, but definitely what highlighted the football that year was the Bellevue West game. And, I was at
we got a lot to talk about in this one.
I was at that game. That was my first away game, I believe, not counting like a Millard North or Millard South like away game. First away game that I was for Millard West. My dad took me and my friend Noah, and we drove us down there to Bellevue West, and we definitely saw a classic. It didn't go in the Wildcats' favor, but it was definitely a classic in a game that people still look back at today and are just like, wow. Jalen Bradley, definitely, obviously, the highlight and why that game is so great. Rushing for over 500 yards, and honestly, just
I think it was 496 was the number.
496. Yeah, he was almost to 500.
Yeah.
And
it was, let's just say, it's a performance that you were never going to forget. In Jalen Bradley's state tournament, those 4 games are what got him into playing at Nebraska.
Yeah, he really put himself on the map.
When you look back on this game, it's not even because of the fact that, it was a good game between the two sides. Full credit in the world to Bellevue West. They completely outplayed the Wildcats all night in that game. Jalen Bradley, 496 yards and 7 touchdowns. What do you have to say about that? I mean, it's one of the best performances. I think it's the all-time leading rushing game in NSAA history.
Yeah.
And it just so happened to be against Millard West, and that's why it's on this list.
Yeah.
Because you were never going to see, you might not ever see a performance as good as this in Nebraska State football.
Yeah, it was just crazy. Every time, you felt Millard West was getting back in, Jalen Bradley would go off for a 50-yard touchdown, and you're like, what is going on? He just made it look so easy. He just went between the tackles sometimes, and he was just gone. And, it was just such it was definitely a tough game to watch, but when it started getting, where Jalen Bradley was just going off, scoring touchdowns left and right, you just had to sit down there and just be like, oh my goodness, this kid, he's something special. It's kind of stinks he hasn't really been able to get it completely going at Nebraska. And I'm hoping he kind of figures it out because this kid still, has a lot of potential. And I think he could be a decent running back at the next level.
Appreciating greatness. And that's all you can do in this game. So moving on to the next one. A moment that, this one just kind of flew underneath the radar. Millard West basketball, the boys team, wins Metro Holiday Championship. So this is something that, I completely forgot about.
Mm-hmm.
I was going through the archives not that long ago, and this came up, and I was like, how do I not remember this? How was I not there? I mean, I believe they beat Papio in the championship of that game. A team that was led by Ed Chang, if I'm not wrong. But I mean, I don't remember much of this, mainly because I just don't remember. It just seems like it was so long ago that it like never even happened.
Yeah, it was something that was definitely like under the radar. I didn't even think about at school. Like we didn't really hear about it. Like I saw pictures of it like down at like Baxter and all that, but it wasn't anything super big. And I mean, it's something we can like look back at and be like, hey, they got a Metro championship. But that's really all there is to say about it, just because of the lack of coverage. I would say kind of our school kind of had on it, but it's definitely still an accomplishment to look on and stuff. And next up, we got a game that led to probably one of the funniest interviews here at Millard West. But Nate, kind of talk about the soccer game against Lincoln North Star.
So this is something that I was really huge into. I had a couple of friends that played soccer. I know a lot of people, soccer just really wasn't big until, these few weeks. We'll get into that here towards the end of the episode, but it's the state quarterfinals of the boys soccer team. They're going up against Lincoln North Star. You really didn't know how to feel because a name that you might remember now, Luka Nidic, played for Lincoln North Star in this game. And I believe they had a guy, his name was Christian Vasquez, scores 2 goals in this game. Millard West soccer legend Caden Frank comes in, scores 2 goals. The game's tied with, 15 minutes to go. Sophomore Braden Evans, who was starting in this game, comes in and scores with 15 minutes left. That ends up being the ultimate winner in that game. And they move on. They play in the state semifinals against Westside. They go in extra time. Kind of falls through for them at the end of the game. They lose 3-1. Their season's over. But when you look back at that game, it was the one time the boys made it to the state championships at Morrison Stadium. And what an insane game it was because of the fact, it's back and forth the whole time. It was high intensity. Both teams were playing with a lot of emotion. They were playing with a lot of passion. They wanted to win the game. And, for the game to have gone like that, and then, you had the post-game moment with Evans in the interview afterwards. It was a fun game. And it's just kind of disappointing you never got to see that again from the boys soccer team.
Yeah, it is definitely, disappointing. But we'll get there and all. And, that's really all we can really say about our sophomore year. Not too much happened. But, I'll definitely say our junior year, definitely a little more special to us. We were a lot more into sports. It was Nate and I's first year in advanced journalism. So it's definitely something, to definitely look at and talk about. So, Nate, what do you want to get started with here in our junior year?
So we were just kind of going down the list because we had so many. We wanted to keep it kind of short so we didn't run, completely over on time. But football game against Bellevue West of junior year. It's another Thursday night lights game. This game's down in Bellevue. Two had to be unbeaten. It was unbeaten teams at this point, correct?
Yeah, I believe it was unbeaten.
So when you look at it, it was, Millard West goes out. They jump out to an early lead in the first half. Bellevue West comes fighting back. It's all knotted up at halftime. It's just kind of like, all right, second half, someone's going to make a move. Millard West makes their move first. Not so fast because they blew a 14-point lead in the fourth quarter, and Bellevue West goes to win this game.
Mm-hmm.
It was tough. it was really tough because everyone knew this was going to be such a big game. Everyone thought, oh, this is going to be an offensive shootout, the two best offenses in Nebraska, and it just kind of turned into more of a defensive
Yeah.
game. But it's still a really fun one to watch.
Yeah, it was fun to kind of, people be surprised that it was more of a defensive game. And, it was still a really good game. And, it's kind of unfortunate we couldn't go on top. And kind of going back to, a team coming back in the fourth quarter, that kind of leads us to our next game. And I would say this is a game that, Nate and I have talked about a lot. A lot of funny stuff happened that night. But we got what we like to call is the knock on wood game, which was Millard West versus Burke. And the reason we call it that is because we were saying, oh, we're going to win this. We're going to go to the state title. And when Burke kind of started coming back, we kind of forgot to knock on wood, and we kind of did a little too late. And, Burke ended up winning that game. What's some of your favorite things to look back on, especially on that game, Nate? Because, that's a game we love to talk about.
Yeah, that quarterfinal in the state tournament against Burke it's quite something because when you look back at it, Burke was one of the favorites to win the state championship that year. They had all the talent in the world. They had Chris Hickman, they have Nick Henrich, they have Tyler Chadwick, they have James Burks. You look at that team and it's like, geez Louise, they have so many good players. And you look at Millard West, who was just playing so well up to that point. And so when that game kind of happened, we were like, this Millard West, looks like they're going to start to push through here in the fourth quarter, the second half, 14-point lead after many said that they were probably going to get bounced in that round. We thought, all right, we got this in the bag. What's our plan for next week when we have state semifinals? And like you said, we couldn't find the wood. That's why we call it the knock on wood game. And they end up blowing the 14-point lead in the fourth quarter again for the second time this season. And, man, it was a depressing mood.
Oh, yeah, that was definitely a game that's just really hard to look back on, honestly. Like, we laugh about it now, but, overall, that was just a tough game. That in that moment, when they lost, we were both devastated. That's one of the most times I felt like really down at a Millard West football game.
And right after it, you had the feeling of what's going to happen next year. Are we going to be back to this point? Because we lost 15 seniors on that team.
Yeah, we were really
worried. 15 starting seniors. And so it looked so bleak going into the 2018 season, which we'll cover here in a couple minutes after we discuss this one last game. But it just seemed almost hopeless. Like, I had the feeling of this could possibly be the last time we had a realistic shot at winning a football state championship. And that's what I wanted to happen when I got into high school.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on to the next game that I just referred to. It's a basketball game. And it's one against the Q Street rivals. And it was one, again, Millard West looked like they had no shot. No shot to win this game. Everyone said that they're going to get blown out against the Millard South Patriots. So kind of take us through that one, Jake.
Yeah. Well, going into this, we were at home. Student sections really showed up. I went to that game. I was in the student section, wasn't doing camera. I believe, were you doing camera for that game? Or?
No, I was right up there with you.
You were right by me. And, Millard West came in really strong. And, we felt that they were going to win a lot, but there's just one player, that really, kind of hurt Millard West's chances. Kind of talk about him, Nate.
So many of you are going to know him for his baseball abilities. Kyle Perry. He might even have been better at basketball than he was at baseball. Mm-hmm. And he's playing D1 baseball in the Big Ten Conference.
Yeah.
If that's saying something. Mm-hmm. So I don't even know how many he had that night, but he had to have had like 30 points in that game.
Yeah, for sure.
For Millard South. And I mean, a lot of people talked about him being one of the leading contenders to be, one of the basketball players of the year, for that season. And wow, that game was incredible. You had two teams that fought as hard as they could. Millard West just could not get away with it at the end. Credit Millard South. They played their A game, and they fought off a team that gave it 100% of their fight in that one. And it was a crazy game to be a part of. And
Yeah, definitely.
I just wish that I was able to enjoy more games like that in my high school time, because I mean, a Friday night basketball game against your biggest rivals, I mean, doesn't get any better than that, especially in a
No,
game
nothing.
that could have went both ways.
Yeah, nothing can really touch that, and that was a really fun game to be a part of. Millard West wasn't able to come out on top, but it was still fun to be a part of that. And I know, like, when I'm in college, I'm gonna remember like all the fun moments we had back at these Millard West games, and it's gonna be like real fun. And I mean, junior year was just a blast overall. I mean, Nate and I, we got to commentate some games. We really started getting into that sports part of Millard West, just understanding everything about it. And overall, Nate, I would say junior, not all the sports really were able to get it done, but I really think us personally, on a personal level, kind of getting introduced into journalism.
Yeah, so I mean, junior, senior year were best times for us together, and we're going to move on into now August. Well, this game's in September of 2018, senior year. And I look back on this game, and this might be the best game ever for me. It's a Friday night game, again. This time it's outside, against your biggest rivals. The Q Street Classic, as some would call it. The Battle of Q Street, whatever. Millard South, Millard West going completely at it with each other. And what a roller coaster of emotions this game was.
Oh, yeah. This was definitely one of the biggest roller coasters that any Millard West fan went through. This game against Millard South is a game I'll never forget. Just all that went into it. Millard South coming in, they thought they finally had Millard West. They thought they were finally able to get that win. The people that were seniors on the Millard South team haven't got a chance to beat Millard West in football, and they wanted to go in and do it. And earlier in that game, it really felt like they were going to do it. Kind of talk about how Millard South kind of got ahead in that game.
So when you look back on it, Millard South had a 10-3 halftime lead. A very slow first half. Very, very, very slow. Wait, no, it was 14-3 at halftime. And Millard West, right out of the gates, Dan Sullivan, 80-yard kickoff return for a touchdown to get Millard West back in that game. And then that's when Millard South started to pour it on a little bit. It was all of a sudden Millard West found themselves down 14 with 8-9 minutes left to play, and we're looking at each other. Wow, this game can really get out of hand here in this last quarter, and that's when the unexpected happened.
Yeah, the unexpected happened as Millard West, they're able to come back in this game somehow. I don't think that we thought the game was done. I think we looked at each other and were like, I don't know how Millard West is going to pull this one off.
And yeah, I mean, I was totally lost.
Yeah,
I was like, this game's lost. What's going to be the outlook going on here the rest of the season? You have a game against Bryan, and then you have a couple tough ones against, a trip out to Kearney, and then Grand Island game. But, screen pass from Jackson Wright. He breaks a couple tackles. All right, this game just got interesting. Millard West gets the ball back again, another touchdown, and now this game is tied.
Yeah. Out of
Millard
nowhere,
South
really.
Millard South gets the ball back. This was when it really looked like, okay, they're going to regain themselves. This game's over. We're going to be done with tonight. And then, who was it? It was Matt Detlefson that blocked a field goal that Millard South attempted at the last second of the game to force overtime.
Mm.
And then overtime, Tristan Gomez touchdown. Millard West stops on defense, and they come back from 14 points down the fourth quarter to win this game.
Yeah, I still remember our call on that, Nate. How crazy we were going up at the top of the goal.
If I was not had a mic around my head and on air, I probably would have lost my mind.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of lost my mind a bit. I mean, I literally yelled on the mic, "We on Q Street, baby." I was so happy. That was definitely a game that was a fun one, Nate.
And this next one was a fun one with the catch. This game should not have been as fun.
No.
And it was not really for the first 4 quarters of this one. Millard West, Grand Island. I know you weren't really there for the first half, so
yeah.
This game was a scrappy first half. It was cold. It was October, so you're starting to get into that winter weather, and then you had the rain start to come down, and then take us through kind of what happened in that second half.
So, Millard West, they had an all right lead going in, and when I showed up, I went up, I said hi to you guys, I went down the student section, and then all of a sudden we thought Millard West had this game in the bag.
Against an undefeated Grand Island team.
Yeah.
This was one of the biggest games of the season.
Yeah, really big game of the season, low scoring. Millard West had this in the bag, and then, comes up to a third down, and they decide to throw a screen pass. And in that screen pass, I don't think Nate still knows today, and I don't really know what Tristan was really looking at. But he threw it, even though it was all right covered, Grand Island player right there, pick six, tied game. Nate, what was going through your mind when that happened? I think shocked.
I think yes. And when you have a moment like that in any type of game, that's when you start to know, all right, is this the time now where you're going to blow that lead? Where you're now going to go and lose that game just like Millard South did. And we had renditions in our minds of, this just happened 2 weeks ago, brace in, because this might be a wild, last minute and a half of this game.
Yeah.
You complete that pass, you had enough green grass to maybe pick up a first down with Dallas beating them. You don't get that first down now, Grand Island's probably going to get that ball back with a minute and a half left. Well, you turn it over and you gave up 6, 7 with the extra point, and now you're heading into overtime and literally pouring down rain. It was 35, 40 degrees outside. It was cold. Dallas Beanham comes up with a big interception.
Mm-hmm.
That sealed the deal, or did Millard West go and score a touchdown right after he picked it? I don't remember, but I just remember
Millard West scored a touchdown right after he picked it.
Was it who scored that one? Was it Tristan again?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Tristan ran it in, and scored the game-winning touchdown. It was crazy being in the student. I was in the student section for that second half, and man, that was one of the funnest times I'll be in the student section. I was getting hugged by people I didn't even know. I was getting picked up. A senior that goes to our school, Wade, he was carrying me. He picked me up. That was just a blast of a game, and I'm glad we were able to pull that one off against the eventual state runner-up, Grand Island.
And now, Millard West 7-2 on the season. That Grand Island one was such a huge win for them, just because of the fact now, you had the higher points, and after that game, it looked like Millard West was going to be the 1 seed.
Yeah, especially over Burke, the team they lost to earlier in the season.
Yeah, and so it looked like 8-1. You grind out these 2 games, Lincoln East and Lincoln North Star. I almost spaced on that one. And, you head in the state tournament. You're the 1 seed. You have the home field advantage throughout the state playoffs. And then you have to slip up against Lincoln East.
Yeah. All right. So basically the next game we're going to be getting into is the Millard West versus Omaha West side. Now, that was a game that Nate and I weren't able to attend. We were in Chicago for a journalism convention, and we had to watch this game on our phones and kind of talk about that experience, Nate. As we were sitting in that pizza joint, watching it around with our fellow Millard West students, just cheering. And I think people around us didn't really know what we were cheering about, but
Yeah, I mean, we had like 8 of us around watching on. I mean, like everyone's phone had it pulled up. We were sharing the link everywhere to everybody. We all had it pulled up. All at a couple seconds before, a couple of seconds behind. We were cheering together, looking around, giving high fives and stuff. It was a really fun experience and a really stressful game. Man, I mean, Millard West they put their big boy pants on for that one. Grounded out of victory after some really tough circumstances that happened, that week before. And so, there was controversy in that game. We're not gonna lie.
Oh yeah,
and
especially the Dallas Beanham pass interference.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to reference. But I mean, we had Twitter was taken by storm. You had everyone, that was from Nebraska commenting on that play, and I mean, that game picked up attention. And Millard West, you come out of that game with the, we have everyone on our back, and we're just going to carry us. We don't care about the outside world. We control what we control, and we do our thing, and everything else will happen around us.
We didn't really care what people thought. We went in that game, and it was for sure a tough game. Game that I know you were definitely nervous for, Nate. You were definitely nervous.
Definitely nervous. Omaha West Side was a great team. Mm-hmm. There's no denying it.
Yeah, they had a lot of good talent on that team.
And they still do have a really good player on that team.
They still do have a lot of talent on the team. And there's a lot to look forward to for them. So, yeah, definitely that was a game that was fun, We're in Chicago. And that next week, there was snow on the ground.
Below zero.
Really cold. Yeah. Nate and I commentating outside in our cold. There's a few times we had to go to the restroom because that was the only warm place at Burke. But
yes, the next game, the state semifinal against Burke. This was the rematch from state quarterfinals a year ago. Omaha,
second
Burke.
Time they were playing at Burke.
Yeah, second time that season they were playing at Burke. Everything was about them. Everything was, can they continue their journey to winning a state championship? Because they were the right end. They were everything's set in stone. Omaha Burke's going to win the state championship this year in football. And Millard West gave them a run for their money. And we walked out of that game thinking, we weren't completely disappointed because of the fact that, everyone knew Burke was going to win that game. But we walked out with an empty feeling and uneasiness because we just thought we deserved to win that game.
Oh, yeah, I feel that Millard West dominated for most of that game. Just Burke was able to just be able to get it at the end and win it for him. And that was just such a disappointing game because, Millard West had so many chances and just kind of just weren't able to execute at the end.
And, I mean, like I said, you just felt uneasy. It wasn't disappointing. I mean, it was disappointing, but it wasn't depressing like you thought, the year before was when you lost to Omaha Burke. This one was, we really should have won this game. Like, we had more of a feeling that we were going to win this game than we did the year before. And we
Mm-hmm.
just walked out more disappointed than we were, like, even frustrated that we did. Just because of the fact that you had to lead. And, it was a gut check because you just realized that was the last high school game you're going to see, and you just left empty-handed. You know, you
Mm-hmm.
you should have been playing at Memorial Stadium 10 days later for a state championship, but instead you were at home watching it on TV. And
Mm-hmm.
it's even hard to explain at this point because you just had so many emotions going through you at once. It was just like, what just happened?
Yeah, I still don't like. It's still kind of an uneasy feeling just thinking about it. When it's a game that, like you said, we should have had, and just didn't really work that way. And Millard West ended their season in the semifinals a lot farther than I feel some people thought they were going to go. So it wasn't a disappointing season by all means. They definitely defied odds, and they just fell short. And it's unfortunate, but um, it is what it is, Nate.
Yeah, exactly. Best as that. And so moving on, that was our last football game as Millard West students. And this one, the day you get out of winter break, everything's building up, and you got a basketball going on that night against the Stallions, right? No, the Mustangs, not the Stallions. I'm clearly smart. Um, the Ponies, let's just call them that because we don't like them
Yeah,
that
I like
much.
the
The
ponies.
Ponies from the Blue School from up north just said they want to take a trip of an inter-district game against Millard West. Christmas time. Millard North comes into this game undefeated. This is the girls' basketball game. Millard North comes in undefeated this season. Millard West playing well below expectations, but this was the game that propelled them pretty far in the season.
Yeah, it definitely did propel them because Millard North's coming in, and they're a team that at this moment we were thinking like, hey, this is a team that could win state. This is a team that could take it on. This is going to be a tough game, and they have some good players. They got a lot of talent, and I mean, we didn't really know what Millard West was, so we had to just kind of see them going in and see what they would kind of do, and it really worked out in our favor as Millard West dominated Millard North for that pretty much that whole game.
The scoreline didn't show it, but it felt like Millard West always had the upper hand. Just because the fact they were only the first team to make a run. Millard North was having to play catch up for most of that game. And the big steal by Chase Van Steele at the end of that game, I mean, it sealed the deal for Millard West. Not much Mustangs could do about it at the end. But it was such a big win, it got them. I think personally, it was the one that pushed them through Millard North the second time they played. Just 2 weeks after this one, in the Metro tournament, Millard West gets to the semifinals. They lose to Omaha Westside that night. But, I mean, that's what really kickstarted a run. And then they got slowed down towards the tail end of that season. But this win against Millard North was so big for them at that moment in time. And it felt like, all right, this is now when they're going to reach their full potential. Maybe now is the time that they're going to compete for a state championship against Millard South.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, it was just kind of obviously disappointing that we felt Millard West girls basketball never really reached it, and they made it to their district championship, just falling short of Westside. And that Westside game, Nate, wasn't that a game that you felt Millard West probably should have won too?
No, yes, because of the fact they made multiple mistakes at the end of that game that showed that they almost weren't ready to play on that stage. You realize though this team had been to these seniors. They'd been in two state tournaments, played in a state championship 3 years ago, and it just felt like they weren't at the stage where they were ready to compete for a district championship again. And they ended up losing to West Side. They missed out as they were not the wild card team. And it was disappointing because I think the state tournament was the ultimate goal for that team, and they just didn't quite reach it in that season.
Yeah, they weren't able to reach it, and kind of a disappointing end. But with us kind of getting down here, let's end this on a high note. Just happened, last Tuesday. Nate, I know you've been following them all season. Talk about pretty much what took place this season for our varsity girls soccer team.
2 words. State champs. Because this team, I think, deserved it all season long. You look at it now, 100 goals scored and 10 goals conceded. That leads both. That's best in Class A in both of those. This team was special. They had the cohesiveness. They had the chemistry that was going to. I mean, if you put those girls back out there, 2 hours after you finish that game, I think they beat that Marion team again. A fresh Marion team. This team had so much talent, and they were so together. They had so much passion. They had the drive to win a state championship in this year because they realized, what happens if we don't win it this year. This is us. This is our time. Like, don't let anybody stop it. And that was what you saw on display when they beat Marion 4-2 in the state championship, and you had the just giant flood of emotions going through you. And this was the first state championship that Millard West had in a matchup form. It wasn't, track and cross country is so different from something like a soccer, a baseball, a basketball, a football, in the sense that you're not playing one game. You're facing off against, 8, 9 teams at state for one of those, whereas you have your mind set on one team and one game.
Yeah. That honestly, just following girls soccer was just, a lot of fun this year. And I mean, it's really cool. I mean, this is the season they had, only winning one game.
Only losing one game.
That was
18,
yeah,
18 and 1.
Game, but
18 wins is a tie for the most in school history.
But if there's one thing, Nate, that the loss they had is a loss that you don't really want to have, but, it doesn't matter anymore, but you know what I mean.
And when I spoke to everyone after the game, they said that loss was I'm literally going direct quote from Coach Jackie Tavis Butler. That loss was the best thing that happened to us. That loss against Millard South was literally turned their whole season around. They were undefeated going into that game. You lose it against a Millard South team that was struggling big time. And now you're like, what do we do? And the way they bounced back through the rest of the season, I think that they were just like, we can't do this again, so let's not make it happen.
Yeah, and they definitely didn't. They didn't look back. They flew pretty much to the end. So basically, Millard West, had a tough game against Lincoln East, and they were able to get past that one. And Nate, that the championship game between Millard West and Marion just felt like Millard West just dominated that game.
And they really did when you look at it start to finish. And the biggest thing I said going into it, Millard West scores first. They're going to win this game. That's the thing that they have to do. And so when they scored first, I just had all the excitement in the world that, this is going to be it. Marion has it 1-1. I still had the thing of, they're going to bounce back from this. They're not going to let this happen like they did against Lincoln East. Because they don't want to play, 100 minutes again. They don't want to go into a penalty shootout. They want to have this game theirs and theirs only. And when it was 2-1, I had that. And then 3-1 going into halftime, I was like, this game's in the bag. Millard West is going to walk out of here with a big old trophy, and state champions next to their name. And you felt it the whole entire second half. Marion just felt like this game was over. It was like they gave up at halftime just because of the fact that they knew that it was going to be too hard for them to come back from 2 goals down.
Yeah, and they just weren't really able to come back from it. And, Millard West, they got another goal off a penalty kick. And Marion scored a late goal in garbage time when, all the seniors got off. And right when the horn sounded, they ran out on the field, excited for a state title. Kind of a bummer that us as students weren't able to rush the field. They didn't let us. But, it was just such a cool thing to see them all running to the trophy. And, Nate, I know you had a first view right there at it, right close-up view. Kind of describe, just the, emotion in that pile.
And, they were all staring at the clock. They were counting down with 2 minutes left. They just kept looking. That was all they had their focus on was, let's get through these 2 minutes. And then when those final few seconds, they were all chanting them. They're all pulling off the restraints that were right in front of them. And right when that final buzzer goes, it is off to the races. And then all of a sudden there's a dog pile at midfield. All you could hear is screams from them. It was surreal. It's something that I never expected myself to be in with. And to be right there in front of it when it happened was crazy feeling. Especially for me, because I had followed that team all season long. And I almost felt the same rush as they did when the final buzzer went off.
Yeah, just a really surreal moment and kind of a way for them to end off their senior careers and us to just get a state championship in right before we graduate was really cool. And, we still got a couple more sports going on still to look forward to. We got baseball. They're going to be playing in the state title tomorrow Friday at 9 a.m.
Which, at the time of our recording, tomorrow is Friday. The state championship will be played in, 15 hours from now. Locations have to be determined, which is kind of interesting. But, this is a shot. Again, this could be the chance that really caps off our careers at Millard West High School. 2 state championships in the span of 3 days.
Yeah.
4 days. We didn't have a state championship. The only 2 state championships we had were cross country and track, both in our sophomore years. Girls track, I believe there's a girls cross country and a guys cross country. Those were the 3 that they had. You didn't have one on a stage like this.
Mm-hmm.
And to have 2 of them, possibly 2 of them in the last week of our high school careers is just crazy to think about, and just shows a fight that us seniors had in us. Was we wanted to go off with the bang. We wanted to be remembered for something, and now baseball has a chance to do that, winning their first one in school history against the red team down the street.
Yeah, and it's just really cool that all of a sudden some of our teams are just really they figured it out. And both soccer, girls soccer, and boys baseball both had phenomenal seasons. The baseball team, they started off 19-0, and they still, they do have 2 games left, and Millard South does have to beat them twice. And they already beat Millard South 11-0 so far in this state tournament. But it's still going to be a dogfight. It's going to be a hard game. It's going to be a game that you really know what to expect. Baseball is a very unpredictable sport. Any team can go in and win. And, Millard West, I mean, yes, you have that advantage, but, you just got to go into each game like it's your last and go in and try to get that other state championship in the first one for baseball. And we still got track coming up, so still a lot to look forward to. But it was really cool to kind of look back at our best moments, best sports moments of our 4 years here at Millard West.
Yeah, and I mean, now with just a few days left before our last day of school, I mean, this is what Millard West is. Competing at the highest level season in and season out. Millard West strives to have, everything ahead of, they're there to win state championships. They're there to be competing on the highest level in high school sports. And I mean, to see that coming together now at the end, but we realize we've had it for the past 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just, really cool. But I think that's going to do it for us here on our last edition of the Wildcat Wire. And, it's bittersweet, but Nate and I were going to be going on to the University of Nebraska-Lincoln and, studying sports media communications and broadcasting. So a lot to look forward to with us. But, Nate, it's been a great year.
It's been a great year, and it's been a great for the past. And it's been such a pleasure to, have 20 episodes of this Wildcat Wire now, but it's kind of sad to see it come to an end right now.
Yeah, it does kind of stink that it's coming to an end, but, next year, I hope that we can kind of keep this Wildcat, Wire thing going here at Millard West. I hope some kids can take it, next year for our journalism staff. We got some people that are really interested in sports, and I know that they're going to do a great job at keeping you guys, up to date with everything, just like we try to do our best all this year. And, I'm just glad that we were able to get to 20 episodes, and it's been a fun time, Nate.
And it has been. So, for the last time, I'm Nate Thomas, not Jake Janicek. We're 20 episodes in, and I can't get this down. I'm Nate Thomas.
And I'm Jake Janicek, and you guys have a great summer.